Today's story is titled, I Finally Moved Out of My Parents' House, Something Followed Me, Part 1, by Fixel1. The link to the story is in the description below. Please enjoy. 3 days ago, I finally moved out of my parents' house, and last night, the thing that took my brother came knocking at my front door. I know how that sounds. Like the kind of stuff you type when you already know people are gonna roll their eyes and look for something less cliche and more entertaining. But I swear it's the truth. And if you keep reading, you'll come to the same realization I did. So let me start somewhere less dramatic. I'm 24 years old, and until this week, I had never lived alone. That wasn't for a lack of trying, of course. My parents have had some kind of issue with me moving out for years, and because they're my parents, they never called it that. They called it concern. They called it timing. They called it waiting until I was doing better, which was always vague enough to mean whatever they needed it to mean. The thing is, if you met them, you'd probably understand why I wanted out in the first place. They aren't bad people, I can guarantee you that. They fed me, put me through school, sat through every appointment, every bad year, every phase where I made it hard to be around me. But they have this way of caring that feels a lot like being watched. They ask questions that don't sound like questions. They remember where you were standing when you answered. They turn ordinary things into rules, and then act hurt when you ask why the rules exist at all. Don't leave windows open after dark. Keep the hall light on. Call if you're going to be home late. Don't answer the door if you aren't expecting someone. The last one, especially. My mother said it to me so often growing up that it stopped sounding paranoid and started sounding like table manners. Don't put your elbows on the table. Don't slam doors. Don't answer the door at night. I thought once I got out of the house, most of that would stop mattering. For a little while, it actually felt like it had. My apartment isn't much. It's a one-bedroom on the third floor of an old building that smells like radiator heat and somebody else is cooking. The floors creak in spots. The plumbing complains whenever I shower, and the front hallway is narrow enough that moving boxes in was basically a wrestling match. I love it already. I mean that. It's the first place I've ever lived that feels like it belongs to me, even if half my stuff is still in bags, because I underestimated how much of adult life is just finding places to put forks. The first night, I sat on the floor and ate takeout with my back against the couch, because I still don't have a kitchen table. I watched garbage on my laptop. I answered exactly 2 of my mother's 4 calls. I ignored my father's voicemail, because I knew it would just be him trying to sound casual while asking whether I'd locked the windows. It felt good. Petty, maybe, but good. I slept badly the first night, though. That part isn't new. I've slept badly for most of my life. There are reasons for that, and this is where I have to tell you something that is either going to make this make more sense or make me sound insane. When I was 8 years old, my twin brother died. His name was Leo. I'm writing this because my parents almost never say it anymore, and because I'm weirdly aware that I don't say it much either. It's always my brother, my twin, him. Like if I say his name too many times, something will hear me and remember that I'm still here, that it didn't get me that night too, and that it may come back to finish the job. Leo and I used to sneak out into our backyard at night. We climbed into the treehouse my dad built for us and played for hours. Treehouse makes it sound nicer than it was. A raised wooden box nailed into a big oak at the back of our yard, with a trap door in the floor and a ladder that always gave me splinters. But to us, it was much more. The old box was our spaceship. That was Leo's idea. We weren't pretending it was in space. We were pretending it was the last place before space. I know that sounds like a meaningless distinction, but when you're 8, it matters. The treehouse was the ship. The yard below was where Earth stopped. Everything beyond the fence was open dark. Vacuum. The kind of cold nothing where something could be waiting and you wouldn't know until it looked back. We had names for everything. The trap door was our hatch. The flashlight was mission control. The old frayed jump rope tied to one side was the tether, in case one of us had to go outside the ship. He was braver than I was, or maybe just stupider. That sounds mean, but if you had met him at 8, you'd know what I mean. He never understood the point of being scared of something if you couldn't see it. I did. I always did. That night, we snuck out after our parents had gone to bed. You can't pretend to be lost in the darkness of space when the sun is out. It was nothing out of the ordinary, just another mission, like many before. I don't exactly remember what month it was. My parents always told me it was January, and maybe the cold was playing tricks on us. But among those foggy memories, the image of my brother wearing just shorts and a t-shirt tells me something different. I don't remember what excuse we used to convince each other, over and over, that this was a good idea. But I remember how Leo used to laugh quietly, because deep down he knew, just like I did, that we weren't supposed to be out there. But above all, I remember looking back at the yard one last time, and feeling that awful little drop in my stomach you get when you realize the dark is even darker than it should be. And I also remember seeing something down there. Before any of you decide what that means, I know how memories work. I know kids misremember things. I know trauma turns one bad second into a whole theater production later. I've had that explained to me enough times to recite it to myself, but I also know what I saw. There was something standing beyond the reach of the yard light, half in shadow, half made of it. I don't know how else to say this without sounding ridiculous. It looked like it was wearing the night sky. Not black skin, not a dark coat. I mean the actual texture of the sky at night. Depth where a person should have had shape. Like if someone cut a man-sized hole in the dark and taught it to smile. And it was smiling. That's the part I remember most clearly. More clearly than my brother's face, which is maybe the worst thing about me. That smile was thin and pale and curved like a half moon. Leo saw it too. I know he did. He stopped laughing. I remember him saying something. I've been trying all morning to pin down the exact words, and every time I think I have them, they slide away again. Something about going outside. Something about it being there. Something that should sound childish when I repeat it now, but doesn't. Then there was movement. My brother was gone from beside me, and then he was on the ground. That's the part no one ever wants to hear me say plainly, because if I say it took him, people look at me one way, and if I say he fell, they look at me another. And I've spent most of my life learning how to stop people from looking at me either way. My parents came running when I screamed. My father found Leo in the yard. My mother found me halfway down the ladder, crying so hard I threw up on myself. There was an ambulance. There were questions. There was a funeral I barely remember, and years after that which felt less like childhood and more like weather. What I do remember is that I kept telling everyone the same thing. Something in the dark took my brother. I said it to my parents. I said it to the doctors. I said it to a child therapist with a bowl of plastic animals in her office, in a voice so careful it made me hate her instantly. I drew it over and over again. A tall shape blacker than black, with a curved white smile, that it took my brother. I woke up screaming. I stopped sleeping. I had these violent meltdowns that are hard to explain now without making myself sound dangerous, which maybe I was. I broke lamps. I bit my own arm hard enough to leave scars. I would cry so hard I couldn't breathe, and then go completely flat afterward, like someone had reached into me and switched something off. Because every time I looked out the corner of my eye, or stood still too long in a dark room, I would see it, with that white, devious smile, looking at me as if to say, "You're next." My parents did what frightened parents do when nothing else works. They took me to specialists. They tried routines. They tried not using the word trauma in front of me like I was too young to hear it. Eventually, they tried medication. I'm not writing this because I blame them for that. I don't know if I do. Maybe sometimes. Mostly. I think they were in over their heads in trying to keep their remaining child from turning into a complete mess. The thing is, it almost worked. Not all at once, but over the years the worst of it faded. The night terrors got less frequent. The rage fits mostly stopped. Therapy became less about the thing in the yard and more about school, friends, adjustments, all the normal words people use when they want to sand down the shape of something uglier. By the time I was a teenager, the entity was something I thought about in the same way I thought about old fevers or childhood imaginary friends. Embarrassing, distant, not exactly fake, but not something I expect to come back. Every now and then, I would still see that smile in a dream. Every now and then, I'd wake up certain something was standing outside my bedroom door. But mornings came, classes happened, life kept going. People grow up, or at least they get better at pretending they did. That's why moving out mattered so much to me. It wasn't just about rent or freedom, or not having my mother ask where I was every time I stepped outside after sunset. It felt like proof. Proof that whatever happened when I was 8 had happened then, not now. Proof that I was a person with a job and bills, and a stupid little apartment, and not just the kid who survived the wrong night. Yesterday, I unpacked the last box from my bedroom at my parents' house. At the bottom was an old plastic flashlight, a cheap red thing with a cracked side, dead batteries still inside. I knew what it was before I touched it. Mission Control. I don't remember packing it. I almost threw it away, but I didn't. I set it on the kitchen counter and told myself I was being sentimental. Healing starts from the smallest things. Around midnight, I was in bed but not asleep. I can hear the building settling around me, the usual old pipe noises, somebody upstairs dropping something heavy and muttering after. A car passed outside. Then it got quiet in that complete, held-breath way buildings sometimes do late at night, like every apartment around you had suddenly become aware of itself. That was when somebody knocked on my front door. 3 slow knocks. Not loud, not urgent, just deliberate. I lay there for a second, annoyed more than afraid. My first thought was my neighbor. My second was some drunk guy at the wrong apartment. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. The knocking came again. Same pace. Same measured sound. I got up and crossed the apartment without turning on the hall light. I don't know why I did that. Habit, maybe. The peephole showed me an empty hallway. Not badly lit. Not obscured. Empty. I stood there long enough that I started feeling stupid. I even put my hand on the lock. And then, from the other side of the door, very softly, came a whisper, the voice of a child. Open the hatch.